when the voting took place, or before the votes, that some began to read the document. And I remember the Cardinal of Westminster at the time, he died right shortly afterwards, Godfrey, saying, "Oh, this is not worthy of a council. Put it out as a separate document." But they began to read it and said, "Gee, we can't just toss it away." But it got 530 some negative votes. Now the rule that this is Pius or Pope Paul VI. Paul VI gradually developed a rule that kind of a red light for him was 250 negatives. Pope Paul was always concerned of getting consensus. That's why you have a lot of compromise in these documents. His motto was in Italian, convincere, non vincere, convince, not conquer. And so if it requires some compromise, so be it. But he didn't want to have just a majority vote. Or he didn't want people walking away like they did at the First Vatican before the vote on infallibility, just not showing up, going back to Germany or whatever. So the Pope was somehow that 500 was a very, very, no other document received during the whole council that many negative votes. The comedy is that a petition was drawn up. You had two petitions. One, you had people like John Cogley of Commonweal, and I forget some of the others, some of the Catholic journalists, with about 25 bishops who wrote a protest letter about it's better to have no document than a bad one, and that this would be an embarrassment to a good Catholic journalist. That was their argument that they were used. So how do you vote? So the day that the vote was going to take place, you had 4 guys at the entrance of St. Peter's down on the steps passing out this petition, how they should vote on it. 2 of them became future cardinals. One, Folk, who then was the Bishop of Mainz, and Mejia, who's 90 years old now, from Argentina. He was just a priest who was editor of like America magazine in Argentina, Buenos Aires, the Criterio, and you had 2 others. They were passing this out. Someone runs up to the Secretary General, who always disdained the press, Felici, Pericles Felici, and he goes storming out and was trying to rip away the papers from those guys, and Bishop Folk of Mainz would not give it to him, and he summons, this is right on the steps here, these Swiss guards. And of course these Swiss guards that are just used to saluting people, they would run like hell if anyone ever tried to. They don't know what to do. I mean, they're being summoned up. What are they going to do? Arrest the bishop because he's got some whatever these papers are in his hand? And so it was kind of an embarrassment. And Felici goes up and tells Cardinal Tisserand, who was presiding over the day's session, and Cardinal Tisserand, who was a senior cardinal, and always chided people who disagreed with him, the wagging French finger, and saying, this is unbecoming of a council which you like kids, acting like kids, like this is in front of 2,200 bishops. I mean, and of course, then the the bishops who were handing this out, they wanted to protest against being called kids. And so, I mean, the thing was a common embarrassment. But I think, fortunately, they got onto it too late, put it that. It was only too late, and the presiding authorities realized too, but what are you going to do? You couldn't just throw it aside. Now the Pope, in proclaiming the two documents, gives a lot of space to the liturgy. When he gets to social community, he uses that wonderful, in Italian, but in the Latin phrase is, it's not non-useful. Non inutile, period. So he realized, I think he was embarrassed by it because he always prided himself. His father was editor of that quite a high-class newspaper in Brescia. So he comes out of a journalist family, Montini, up in his hometown of Brescia. So he kind of prided himself on that. And I guess he didn't know what to do with it either.